was thinking today as we get started tonight, I was thinking a little bit about the topic tonight. And for whatever reason, which I say for whatever reason, I know when the Lord gives me something to share, specifically it's usually for some people. Usually there's somebody that's going through something, someone's got something on their mind, on their heart, and God is just wanting to speak into them. And so tonight, just for a few minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about one of the amazing things that Jesus has done so well and He's taught us. And it's actually one of the commandments that we have. We're going to talk tonight about forgiveness. Forgiveness. Everybody put forgiveness down in the chat section down there in the comments section. Forgiveness. Now, forgiveness is really an amazing thing. And when you look at Jesus' life and how He uniquely among all people never sinned one time. I know some of you guys are pretty perfect, but I want you to imagine in Jesus' life, He never sinned one time. And yet, He was being falsely accused by people over and over and over again. And so one of the things when you look at Jesus, and we're supposed to keep our eyes on Jesus, Hebrews 12 talks to us about keeping our eyes on Jesus, studying Him, examining Him, looking at Jesus' life as He is our model. What did Jesus do consistently and had to do so well? And that was He walked in obedience to the Father. That's the first thing. He walked in obedience to the Father, but He also consistently forgave people. He consistently walked in forgiveness. And that is a key component for our lives. And I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about what that looks like. In Luke chapter 23, verse 34, we see Jesus hanging on the cross. We just celebrated Easter, Resurrection Sunday, a couple of weeks ago. And we remember on Good Friday that Jesus hung on the cross. And one of the things He said, and that He actually prayed, He said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. They do not know what they do." Now, when you see the heart of Jesus praying for you and I, and He's saying, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." And yet, from my perspective, they did know what they were doing as far as trying to kill Him. I mean, they were trying to kill Him. The Jewish leaders wanted Him dead. The crowd went along with it. The Romans jumped in there and helped also. The goal was to get Jesus out of the picture. Satan wanted Him dead. Everybody wanted Him dead. And yet, we see Jesus here praying and say, "Father, forgive them because they do not know what they're doing." That's an amazing thought. You know, how could Jesus say that about people that had just beaten Him almost to death, that forced Him to carry His own cross, that unjustly and falsely accused Him? How could He say, "Father, forgive them because they do not know what they're doing"? Well, when I consider Jesus as the model of my own life, and I see how He could forgive people that had falsely accused Him and even were causing Him to die, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for me? If Jesus did that for those that were abusing Him and hurting Him, what am I called to do? I'm called to do the exact same thing. As a matter of fact, Jesus said something very powerful in Matthew chapter 6, verse 15. He said this. You guys might want to write this down for sure in your notes. But Jesus said this: "If you do not forgive others their sins, neither will your Father forgive your sins." If you do not forgive other people their sins, neither will your Father forgive your sins. So we see Jesus on the cross forgiving people that had sinned against Him. And here we also see in Matthew, Jesus telling us that if we don't forgive others, we can't be forgiven. And I don't know about you, but there are some verses in the Bible, when I read them, I really don't like them a whole lot. And that's one of those that's very difficult. You may not have to forgive people who hurt me, forgive people who have sinned against me, forgive people who have willingly gone after me in my life, willingly tried to hurt me and cause harm or bring harm to me. You're telling me I have to forgive them, and not only do I have to forgive them, if I do not forgive them, neither can my sins be forgiven. Now, why would that be? I mean, what is it that Jesus wants us to see here? What is it that He wants us to learn here? Well, I will tell you this, and theologians say this, one or two in particular have said that we're never more like Jesus than when we forgive people. We're never more like Jesus when we forgive people, especially people, I would say, that don't deserve our forgiveness. People that have willingly gone out and hurt us, gossiped about us, said bad things, tried to bring destruction in our lives. But when we forgive those people, and we have the heart of Jesus in here, we forgive them like he forgave those who were crucifying him. We are never more like God. We are never more like Jesus than when we walk in forgiveness. But why then? Why then is it so critically important that we walk in forgiveness in our lives? Well, I want to tell you it's really very, very simple. If you also look down at Hebrews, you're going to see one of these things where the scripture tells us that we need to be very careful in our lives, because if we do not, in Hebrews 12, it says if we do not, we should not allow in our lives, we need to be very watchful and not allow a root of bitterness to grow up in our life and so defile many. Well, what does that mean? Well, a plant has to have a root. Before the plant can have a root, there has to be a seed. So you have to have a seed. A seed has to be planted for a plant to grow. And I want you to imagine for a moment that you have some unforgiveness in your life. Let's say someone at work or someone at home, someone in your life has hurt you. And instead of forgiving them, as Jesus has commanded us to do, even those that are outright going against us, instead of forgiving those people, we don't do that. And I want you to imagine with me, just use your imagination for a moment. Imagine that unforgiveness is a seed. And you take that seed of unforgiveness, and by not forgiving someone, you take that seed and you plant that seed in your heart. Well, what does that seed do? Well, what do all seeds do? They grow. And they grow, and then that's where that root begins to go down. And that root, when it grows up, on the other side, a plant is growing up. So the root goes down, but the plant grows up. And what we see in Hebrews, it says, be careful that you do not allow a root of bitterness to grow in your life. Because if you do, it will grow up into a plant in your life, and it will defile many. It will defile many. Here, I want you guys to write this down. I want you to put this in the notes. You ready? A bitter root causes bitter fruit. A bitter root causes bitter fruit. It is very, very difficult to be around bitter people. And you can identify who they are pretty quickly. I mean, you can tell bitter people. Usually they may have a look, but their words are bitter. Their actions are bitter. See, what happens in our lives when we don't forgive, what happens is, now watch this, guys, we take that unforgiveness and we put it down in our life, and here's what happens. It begins to grow in our lives. That bitterness begins to grow in our lives, and it begins to impact our close relationships. It begins to impact our family. It begins to impact our friends. That root of bitterness begins to impact the people that are closest to us. Why? Because that bitter root grows bitter fruit. And the bitter fruit begins to defile many. See, here's what happens with bitterness. Let me back up here. Did you know that joy is contagious? Do you know that enthusiasm is contagious? Did you know that a good attitude is contagious, but so is a bad one? Bitterness gets on people around you just like happiness and joy gets on people around you. Love gets on people around you just like hate gets on people around you. Those attitudes of our heart and of our life are contagious, and they impact the people in our lives, especially the people that are closest to us. A bitter root grows bitter fruit. And Jesus recognized that in his own life, he was showing us the model. He never allowed, listen to me guys, he never allowed the actions of the people around him to change his mission and change his life. He never allowed that. And so he had never allowed that seed of unforgiveness, that seed of bitterness to grow in his life. And so he was able to completely walk in love all the time because he immediately forgave. And I want you, for whoever this is for tonight, you need to learn to forgive. I'm a police officer. That's one of the roles that I have in my life. And I have a set of handcuffs that I carry around, a couple actually, that I've got in my vehicle. And I want you to imagine for a moment, this is what unforgiveness does. When you have someone in your life that you bear unforgiveness towards, you're not willing to forgive them, I want you to imagine for a moment that you take a handcuff and you handcuff yourself because you've now got this root of bitterness in your life. But what you do, imagine yourself handcuffed to that person. And so everywhere you go, that person, that bitterness that's there, goes with you. But what happens when we forgive people? Well, what happens when we forgive them is we unhook them from the handcuffs, but by so doing that, we also free ourselves. See, when I forgive other people, I also am set free. When I let them go, when I forgive them, Jesus on the cross saying, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. When he forgave like that, guys, we forgive in our own lives and it sets us free. See, what happens is when I walk around with unforgiveness, maybe towards someone that's hurt me in my past, I've been deeply, deeply wounded by people in my lives. Many times those people are close to you. Those people can wound you deeply. They can hurt you deeply. And if you internalize that, it will make you a bitter person. A bitter root grows a bitter fruit. And it will defile your environment. It will defile those closest to you. But when you walk in forgiveness, the opposite begins to take effect. When you walk in forgiveness, no one can have control over you. See, when I walk in unforgiveness against someone, I'm giving them control of my life. I am handcuffing myself to them. But when I walk in forgiveness, and Rob, you said this a couple of moments ago in the comments, and you were so right. Immediately forgive. Quickly forgive. Forgive quickly. And you may say, well, Pastor Chris, you don't understand what they did to me. They don't deserve forgiveness. Well, guys, I need to tell you something. Listen to me now. I'm going to back up, but you guys need to listen to me. Listen to my heart as I tell you this. In life, we tend to judge people by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intentions. We judge other people by their actions, but we tend to judge ourselves by our intentions. Well, this is how I felt, or this is what I thought, but then I judge them by their actions. See, when we walk in unforgiveness towards others, we're taking all that away. My intention wasn't to. Well, no, your intention needs to be walk in forgiveness. The action of forgiveness. And listen to me, y'all. Forgiveness is a decision. Forgiveness is a choice. It is not an emotion. Well, I don't feel like forgiving them. This is not about your feelings. Your feelings don't matter here. Don't let your feelings get in the way from this. Walking in forgiveness is absolutely a choice. I choose to forgive. Jesus on the cross chose to forgive those people. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. And then he gives us that model that says, if you don't walk in that kind of forgiveness, if you don't forgive others, my Father can't forgive you. Because you're choosing not to be like God. You're choosing not to be like him. And you can't allow that bitterness to get in there, guys. See, I know that there's someone tonight. I mean, obviously this was the message, so there's somebody struggling with this. Maybe you've got a spouse or a family member or a boss or someone that hurt you deeply. Maybe some of you have even dealt with situations like rape or abandonment, abuse. You have dealt with horrific situations. I am not downplaying that. Please understand the heart of God for you. I am not downplaying that. It is horrible. Those that hurt you were wrong. It is not okay. People sinned against you. That is not okay. But let me tell you what else is not okay. See, when you don't forgive, that seed is grown, and some of you guys have, because of the abuse or hurt or pain others have caused you. You have now allowed that bitterness to take a hold of your life, and it's destroying your life, and it is destroying your future. And you got to let it go. You've got to let it go. You've got to walk in forgiveness. Well, Pastor Chris, you don't understand what they did to me. You're right. But it doesn't also allow you to just say, well, this is so great that I should internalize this, and now I'm going to have to live with this the rest of my life because what someone has done for me. And now you are held captive by that unforgiveness. That's not the way it's supposed to be. We forgive and we love because he has forgiven us. He has loved us. We need to model that. And some of you right now need to be set free, and you need to forgive what those people have done to you. Unloose them from your life. Release them from your life. Okay? Father, forgive them. Lord, I'm sorry they did this to me. That what they did hurt my life. It wounded me deeply. It almost destroyed me. But Lord, you know what? I'm going to ask you, as you have forgiven me, Lord, as you have forgiven me, Lord, I now choose to forgive them. I choose to forgive them because of what you've done for me, so that I can be free. Lord, I set them free. Lord, and this is what I want you to do. And here's what I want you to do. Some of you need to hear this. I'm even going to take it a step further. You need to pray that God will bless them. You're like, what? What do you mean bless them? Jesus said, bless those that curse you. You need to pray for them. Let me tell you something. Guys, when you begin to pray for those that have hurt you and allow God to move in their lives, amazing things begin to happen in your own. You become so much more like Jesus. Lord, forgive that person. Lord, I can't imagine what was going on in their life that they chose to hurt me or hurt a family member or hurt someone. But Lord, I pray that you would forgive them. Lord, as you have forgiven me, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't deserve his forgiveness. But he chose to forgive me. Not on my best day, on my worst day. He chose to forgive me. And so, Lord, I choose to forgive them. And what I want you to do when you begin to pray for this person is name them. Lord, I lift up such and such to you, Lord. I ask you, Lord, I forgive them, Lord, and I pray that you would move in forgiveness in their life and help them. As you have forgiven me, Lord, so do I forgive them.
Right.
And let me tell you what happens. Let me tell you what happens. The Lord will uproot that root of bitterness in your life, and he will remove it. He will uproot that root of bitterness in your life, and he will remove it. And then what you do is ask him to move in your life and replace it with his Spirit. Lord, where there was pain before, I ask you to come in and plant an amazing thing in my life. Lord, where there was hurt before, I ask you to come in and give me love. Lord, if you could forgive those that crucified you, then Lord, I ask you to help me forgive those that hurt me. And Lord, I pray you would replace that with your love in my life. Where there was bitterness, there's now hope. Where there is brokenness, there is now wholeness. Where there was pain, there is now joy. See, that's the supernatural work of God. That's what he does. That is what he does. And guys, you no longer need to carry that. It is not your burden. It is not your burden. Now, as you have prayed for and forgiven other people, there's one more person that you need to forgive. You ready? Anybody want to guess who that might be? How about yourself? How about yourself? You need to forgive yourself. Some of you need to recognize that forgiveness is not only for other people, but you need to let yourself go. You need to free yourself. Lord, forgive me for what I have done. Lord, I repent and turn away from the pain that I've caused and the hurt that I've caused other people. Lord, forgive me. And I would even encourage some of you, if you've hurt some people, you've done some things in your life, ask for forgiveness. Say, I'm sorry for what I did. I hurt you. And I ask that you would forgive me. I'm so sorry that I've hurt you. And forgive yourself. See, that grace that you're extending to those other people can now be extended to you. Remember what Jesus said? If you don't forgive others, I can't forgive you. But what happens when you forgive others? You can receive that forgiveness also. And he can begin to clean you from the inside out. Guys, this is one of the keys to life. How did Jesus walk through the world and not sin? One of the ways he did was that he walked in forgiveness. Because he was constantly, when he started his ministry, people were constantly after him, false accusations, trying to kill him. They did everything they could, and yet Jesus would never take the bait. Not even on the cross. He would never take the bait. You don't need to take the bait either. You need to repent. Receive that forgiveness for yourself. As you have forgiven others, now receive that forgiveness for yourself. And guys, I want to tell you, for some of you tonight, this can be absolutely transformative in your life. It can be absolutely transformative. So, what are the action steps? Well, I know that there's many people on here watching tonight, and those that will watch later, that you've learned this lesson, that you've received this lesson a while ago, and you've learned to walk in forgiveness and the joy that comes with that. And it is a true joy to be able to quickly walk in forgiveness and not allow the enemy to have any kind of foothold, and no roots, no seeds. You're walking in that forgiveness, and that's an amazing thing. But some of you maybe never have. You never have. And now maybe you don't even realize how bitter you've become, and how in your life there's these areas that this darkness has been allowed to just grow. Well, the Lord doesn't want that for you. He doesn't want that for you, because it's destroying you. So what you need to do tonight, and I'm going to pray for you here in a few minutes, but what you need to do when we get finished tonight is what I want you to do is I want you to sit back and reflect on what we've talked about. And then I want you to think of those people that have hurt you. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to call them out by name and say, Lord, I forgive. Say their name for what they did to me. Lord, as you have forgiven me, Lord, I forgive them, and I set them free. And then what I want you to do is say, Lord, I pray that you will bless them. Father, bless them. And I don't care if it takes you 20 minutes, because you've got a list. For some of you, it'll be a very short list of people. Maybe it's someone that abused you or hurt you, whatever the situation is, even if people that have hurt you that you don't know their name. But you give them to the Lord, and you watch what he will begin to do in your life. And then this is what I want you to do last, is I want you to say, Lord, I ask you to forgive me as I've forgiven others. Lord, I pray that you would forgive me, and that you would cleanse me from all unrighteousness. Lord, that you would remove that root of bitterness from my life. And Lord, fill me with your joy and your peace. And I want to tell you something. For some of you tonight, you may get the best night's sleep that you've had in a long time. You can take dream from Dr. Gibbs, but you can rest tonight, because you won't be tormented anymore, because you will be free, because you'll have that freedom that God gives you because of what Jesus has done. Such an important lesson. And it's so easy for us to overlook it in Jesus' life, but he always walked in forgiveness, and he asks us to do the exact same thing. Amen? Well, let me pray for you tonight. Father, I just pray, Lord, and I know you had somebody in mind, or you wouldn't have had me do this, that there's one of your kids that you love so much that is in bondage. Lord, that they walked in unforgiveness, and now that root, that seed of bitterness and unforgiveness has grown into a plant. Lord, I just pray tonight that your grace would touch them and help them. That, Lord, they would choose to forgive. That they would make that choice to forgive as you have commanded us to. And, Lord, that you would set them free. That you would set them free and give them peace and joy. Lord, I pray for some, it's going to be a brand new life tonight, Lord. A brand new life. That they're going to receive joy and peace in their life. And Father, I pray that you would bless them. And Lord, first of all, I pray that you would give them peace and a joy, Lord, and a peace that passes understanding, and that their family, Lord, would begin to experience joy as they walk in freedom, that the weight of that sin and unforgiveness comes off of them, and they are able to walk in freedom, maybe for the first time in years. Lord, I ask you to do that for these folks tonight, that they would choose to forgive. And Lord, also, I pray that they would also receive forgiveness for those that are struggling with things maybe they've done or things they've said or guilt that they've borne, that, Lord, they would forgive themselves, and that, Lord, you would mend their broken hearts. And I thank you for that, Father. In Jesus' name. And everybody said a big amen and amen. Well, thanks for joining me tonight for Wiser Wednesday. Hopefully get to see you guys at the different regional events coming up. Make sure you go to the website to see those. God bless y'all. And I really do. I'm so excited because I believe somebody's going to receive this tonight. It's going to be a life-changing moment for them. Amen. So God bless you guys. Have a great night. We'll see you next week on Wiser Wednesday.